The moment Aara Hayes stepped into courtroom 4 amperes, she knew something inside her was wrong again. It wasn't just the usual dizziness or the faint metallic taste coating her tongue like old copper. It was something deeper, like a warning coming from inside her bones. The murmur of reporters, the snapping shutters, the rustling of papers, all merged into a low buzzing that made her vision pulse at the edges. She held the edge of the defendant's table as quietly as she could, hoping no one would see how badly her hands shook. But Chloe Vance saw everything. She always did. Sitting directly behind Marcus, her legs crossed neatly, her posture immaculate, she leaned slightly to the side so Aara couldn't miss the smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. It was soft, beautiful, really but sharp as a blade. Aara dropped her gaze quickly. She couldn't afford to fall apart again. Not here, not where every breath she took was already seen as proof of her instability. The judge hadn't entered yet. Reporters whispered excitedly about Marcus Hayes, the rising star of the city council, the man everyone said would be mayor one day. A man of the people. A man with a perfect marriage until, apparently, his wife lost her mind. Aara swallowed hard. She tried to focus on the grain of the wooden table, tried to breathe slowly, but her heart kept tripping over itself, like it was trying to outrun the fog spreading through her skull. She tried to remember what her lawyer, Arthur Calloway, had told her 20 minutes earlier in the hall. Slow breathing. Speak only when asked. Keep your eyes forward. Don't let them provoke you. Don't let them twist your words. She tried. God, she tried. But she could barely remember what day it was. The electric lights above her hummed louder, or maybe that was just her ears. The metallic taste grew sharper, and then the bailiff's voice cut through it. All rise for the Honorable Judge Evelyn Reed. The entire courtroom rose. Aara tried to stand without using her hands, but her legs wobbled. Arthur gently touched her elbow, steadying her. She managed a weak nod. Judge Reed settled into her seat, her eyes cold, sharp, taking in everything with a single sweep of the room. She wasn't a woman who missed details. Aara prayed silently, desperately that maybe Reed could somehow see what Aara couldn't articulate, that she wasn't drunk, that she wasn't losing her mind, that something terrible was happening to her. But prayers had long stopped working for her. When they sat again, Aara's head dipped instinctively, as if her spine could no longer hold her upright. Arthur shot her a worried look. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She lied. "Yes." Across the aisle, Marcus adjusted his suit, the picture of dignified concern. His dark hair was perfectly combed, his expression somber. He even placed a hand over his heart, as if silently grieving the state of the woman he'd shared a home with for 15 years. The cameras loved it. Aara's stomach turned. "Let's proceed," Judge Reed said. "Mr. Croft, you may continue your cross-examination." Benjamin Croft, the shark in a $1,000 suit, rose smoothly, his smile polite but predatory. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, walking toward her slowly as if she were a fragile animal. "I'll remind you you're under oath." Aara nodded. Or she tried to. The movement felt slow, like her neck was turning through thick mud. "Mrs. Hayes," Croft repeated, "on the night of October 14th, you were scheduled to accompany your husband, Councilman Hayes, to the mayor's gala, a crucial event for his political future. You did not attend." He stopped directly beside her, lowering his voice for dramatic effect. "Tell the court why." Aara blinked rapidly. She knew the answer. She'd known it yesterday, last week, last month, but suddenly her mind was empty, blank. It was like reaching for a light switch in a room she no longer recognized. I wasn't well," she finally managed quietly. A soft laugh rippled through the gallery. Croft clicked his tongue sympathetically. "Unwell. Yes, much like the nights you missed the Children's Hospital fundraiser, the district outreach dinner, the Veterans Memorial." "Objection," Arthur snapped, rising quickly. "Relevance." "Overruled," Judge Reed said with mild annoyance. "Let him continue, but get to the point, Mr. Croft." "Of course, Your Honor." Croft turned back to Aara. "Mrs. Hayes, are these absences related to the drinking?" The room inhaled sharply. Aara stared at him. "What drinking?" "Oh, come now," he said gently, as if speaking to a child. "Your husband has had to pour out entire bottles. You've hidden vodka, Mostly. I don't drink vodka, Aara whispered. Her throat tightened around the words. I never have. Marcus's voice floated across the room. Soft, mournful. Honey, please, he murmured. Don't lie. Her breath hitched. I'm not. Her chest constricted as if invisible ropes were tightening around her ribs. Croft slid a photograph onto the table. Exhibit D. Aara forced herself to look. Her kitchen, her body slumped over the table. A nearly empty vodka bottle beside her. Her hair tangled, her clothes wrinkled, her face slack. Her hands trembled violently. I don't remember this. Convenient, Croft murmured. Aara's pulse roared. The lights above her flickered, or maybe her vision did. She tried to swallow but couldn't. Her mouth was dry metal. Mrs. Hayes, Croft said, his voice suddenly distant. Your erratic behavior is well documented. You have accused your husband of sabotage, infidelity, conspiracy. Aara's voice cracked. The buzzing in her ears grew louder. Under the table, her knees began to buckle. And now, Croft finished triumphantly, you can't even recall your own actions. The laughter from the gallery returned, crueler. Aara reached for the table edge, but her fingers slipped. Across the aisle, Chloe tilted her head slightly and smiled. A bright, victorious smile. Aara's heart dropped. Her lungs tightened. The walls blurred. The ceiling spun. The buzzing became a roar. She heard Arthur say something, felt him try to grab her arm, but his voice sounded miles away. Aara tried to breathe, tried to stand, tried to speak, but her body gave out before her words could. And the last thing she saw was Chloe's smile widening full, triumphant, glorious before the world went dark. When Aara collapsed, the courtroom didn't react like a place of justice, it reacted like an arena. Gasps echoed. Reporters lurched forward with the instinct of vultures spotting the first drop of blood. Marcus was on his feet instantly, playing the devastated husband so convincingly that even the bailiff hesitated before stepping between him and Aara's crumpled body. Aara, honey, Marcus called out, voice trembling, eyes wide in perfectly performed anguish. And behind him, Chloe didn't move, only smoothed her skirt, crossed one leg over the other, and let her triumphant smile fade into a mask of appropriate concern. Judge Evelyn Reed watched all of this from the bench without blinking. She was a woman who'd seen everything: manipulators, liars, victims, and the dangerous space where the three blurred. Yet what she saw now, the husband's theatrical panic, the mistress's slip of satisfaction, the defendant's sudden collapse, did something she didn't expect. It bothered her. Clear the gallery, Reed commanded, hammering her gavel sharply. Court is in recess. The bailiffs moved quickly, forcing the reporters out. Marcus tried to follow the paramedics as they lifted Aara onto the gurney, but Reed raised a hand. Mr. Hayes, you will remain in this courtroom. Your Honor, she is my wife, Marcus protested. A wife you are attempting to declare mentally unfit, Judge Reed replied coolly. Sit, Marcus froze. Slowly, Saturday. Chloe shrank back a little, as if suddenly aware of just how closely Reed's eyes were on her. When the courtroom finally emptied, the quiet that followed was suffocating. Reed stepped down from the bench, her robe sweeping behind her like a shadow as she crossed the room. She didn't look at Marcus first. She looked at Chloe. Miss Vance, she said evenly, you seem unusually composed for someone who just witnessed a medical emergency. Chloe flinched. It was small, almost nothing, but Reed noticed. Reed always noticed. Your Honor, I'm just shocked. Reed turned away without another word. She didn't believe her. She didn't know why yet, but she didn't believe her. A paramedic approached Marcus. Sir, we need to ask a few questions. I'm going with her, Marcus insisted. No, you're not, Reed said sharply. Mr. Calloway will accompany Miss Hayes. You will remain here for inquiry. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is an overreach. This is my courtroom, Reed said, her eyes cold as flint. And something is very, very wrong. When the doors shut behind the gurney, and only Marcus, Chloe, Croft, and a single bailiff remained, Judge Reed walked back to the bench, not sitting, just leaning against it, arms crossed. Mr. Hayes, she began, your wife has had 6 months of unexplained medical complaints. She's visited neurologists, gastroenterologists, allergists, and endocrinologists. Every standard diagnostic test has come back clean. Marcus spread his hands. Yes, Your Honor. That's exactly the problem. No one can find what's wrong. Or, Reed interrupted, no one has looked in the right place. The silence sharpened. Marcus blinked. Chloe swallowed. Croft adjusted his tie. Reed reached for a folder on her bench. Not the divorce file. Not the financial documents. Another folder. Thinner. Mr. Hayes, do you know what chronic low-dose poisoning looks like? Marcus's face paled. Poisoning? He repeated. Your Honor, that's absurd. Is it? Reed's voice was calm, almost gentle. Dizziness, memory fog, metallic taste, fatigue, neurological confusion. And now? She tapped the folder. Collapse. Chloe's breathing grew uneven. She clasped her hands together, knuckles whitening. Reed didn't look at her yet. Instead, she opened the file. Inside was a simple printed note, paper clipped to a padded manila envelope. No return address. Postmarked 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, Reed said slowly. Someone sent my chambers a package. Anonymous. It contained a USB drive with an audio recording. Marcus stiffened. Chloe stopped breathing for half a second. The recording, Reed continued, appeared to capture a conversation between you, Mr. Hayes, and your chief of staff. Chloe closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing herself against a wave. Reed noticed. The content was disturbing, the judge said. Very disturbing. But it was also inadmissible. So I did nothing. She let that sink in. A legal grenade with the pin still intact. But now, Reed continued, tapping the folder again, your wife collapsed in my courtroom, exhibiting symptoms consistent with what I heard on that recording. Your Honor, Croft cut in quickly, this is outrageous. You cannot use. I haven't used anything, Reed snapped. Sit down. Croft Saturday, Reed inhaled slowly, deeply, as if steadying herself. Then she shifted her gaze to Marcus. Street. Luke's hospital is running a full toxicology panel on your wife right now. Not a standard one, a comprehensive one. I ordered it myself. Marcus stood abruptly. You had no right. I had every right. Reed shot back, her voice rising for the first time. A woman collapsed under my jurisdiction. I will find out why. Chloe's eyes darted toward Marcus, a flicker of silent accusation already forming. Marcus ignored her. His hands shook slightly. Reed's gaze didn't miss this either. Tell me something, Reed said softly. Why did your mistress smile when your wife hit the floor? Chloe gasped quietly. Marcus turned sharply toward her. She didn't. She did, Reed said, her voice like iron scraping stone. And I want to know why. The courtroom door opened. A bailiff entered, holding a single sheet of paper. Your Honor, preliminary results from the hospital. Marcus's face drained of color. Chloe gripped the edge of the table, nails digging into the wood. Reed accepted the paper. She read it. Her eyes narrowed, then hardened. Slowly, deliberately, she folded the paper and set it aside. Mr. Hayes, she said quietly. Miss Vance, you will both join me in chambers. Why? Marcus whispered. Reed met his gaze with eyes that saw straight through him. Because whatever game you thought you were playing, she picked up the USB drive. It ends today. Chloe's mask finally cracked. Her lips trembled. Marcus stared at the USB as if it were a live grenade. And Judge Evelyn Reed, with the calm of someone who had waited a long, long time for the truth, walked toward her chambers without looking back. Outside, Aara Hayes was being rushed down a hallway toward an emergency CT scan, unaware that inside courtroom 4 amperes, the first fracture had appeared in the polished facade of her husband's lies. The avalanche had only just begun. Judge Evelyn Reed's chambers were nothing like the imposing courtroom behind them. No oak panels, no high ceilings. Just a narrow rectangular room lined with law books, a faint lemon scent, and a single desk lamp casting long shadows across the carpet. But the atmosphere inside it now was far heavier than anything out in courtroom 4 amperes. Marcus Hayes stood near the door, arms crossed to hide the slight trembling in his hands. Chloe sat in the corner closest to the window, but her eyes stayed glued to the USB drive sitting on Reed's desk like a loaded weapon. Her foot tapped the floor fast, then faster, then suddenly stopping whenever Reed glanced her way. Benjamin Croft hovered between them, his confidence drained, looking more like a man trying not to drown in quicksand. Reed didn't sit. She remained standing behind her desk, fingers lightly touching the USB drive, her expression unreadable. "Let's begin," she said at last. Her voice was quiet, but the room felt smaller because of it. "Your Honor," Croft said immediately, stepping forward. "If this is regarding the anonymous recording, we must object to its discussion. It's not authenticated. It's illegally obtained. It's—" "Mr. Croft," Reed said, "I know exactly what it is, and what it isn't." She tapped the USB once. "This recording has been sitting in my possession for 2 weeks. I ignored it because I had no corroboration. But now?" She lifted the folded preliminary toxicology sheet from Street Luke's hospital. "Now I do." Marcus exhaled hard, like he'd been punched. Chloe pressed a hand to her stomach. Croft swallowed. "Your Honor, with all due respect, do not interrupt me again," Reed said, turning her full gaze on him. "Not unless you want to be held in contempt." Croft shut his mouth. Reed continued. "This recording describes symptoms consistent with chronic low-dose poisoning. It references specific compounds, none of which appear on standard hospital tests. But the preliminary panel from Street Luke's," she unfolded the sheet slowly, "shows elevated levels of lithium or thate and traces of an atypical heavy metal binding agent, both non-prescription, both uncommon." A choking sound escaped Chloe. She slapped a hand over her mouth, but too late. Reed's eyes flicked toward her. "Miss Vance, is there something you'd like to confess?" No, Chloe whispered, voice thin. It's shocking." "Indeed." Reed placed the toxicology report on the desk, beside the USB. Then she leaned back slightly, arms crossed. "Here is what is going to happen. I am going to play 2 minutes of this recording. Not for the public record, for my own evaluation." Marcus took a step forward. "Absolutely not. Sit down, Mr. Hayes," Reed snapped, sharper than anyone in the room had ever heard her. Marcus's mouth opened, then shut. "He's Saturday." Chloe looked at Marcus, as though begging him with her eyes to stop making things worse. Reed inserted the USB into her computer. The small speaker on her monitor crackled softly. A hiss of static, then a sound. Chloe's voice. Clear, too clear. She's still not getting worse fast enough. The room froze. Marcus's shoulders jerked as if someone had poured ice water down his spine. Chloe's eyes widened impossibly. "Oh my God," Croft whispered. Reed's face didn't move. "Continue," she said to no one, because the audio didn't need permission. Marcus's voice came next. Calm, cold, the voice of a man who believed no one would ever hear him. "I'm using exactly what you told me. 2 drops in her tea, the capsule in her smoothie." Chloe's recorded voice laughed softly. She said it tasted off yesterday. A shaky breath escaped the real Chloe, now small, broken. "Your Honor, please, it's taken out of context." "Silence," Reed ordered. The audio continued. "Marcus, it just feels wrong. She looked so lost this morning." "Chloe, she is lost. That's the point. The sooner she breaks, the sooner she's declared incompetent. Then the money is yours, ours." A soft clinking sound, a glass lifted in a toast, and then Chloe's voice again. "To the future mayor." Reed stopped the recording. The room was deathly still. Chloe collapsed into the chair fully, her spine curling inward, fingers trembling uncontrollably. Marcus stared at nothing, eyes unfocused, face gray, sweat collecting at his temples. Croft looked sick, truly nauseous. Reed closed her computer, slid the USB back onto the desk, and folded her hands in front of her. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Vance." Her tone was controlled, icy calm, the kind that terrified any sane person. "The content of that recording aligns with the toxicology report from the hospital. It aligns with Mrs. Hayes's symptoms. It aligns with your behavior in my courtroom. Particularly yours, Miss Vance." Chloe burst out. "This is a setup. Someone faked our voices." "A deep fake," Marcus blurted desperately, latching onto the word. "Exactly. It's all AI, Your Honor. This is political sabotage." Reed raised one eyebrow. "A deepfake submitted anonymously, 2 weeks ago, describing exact chemical compounds that were only detected in your wife's blood less than an hour ago? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Try again. Chloe's lips trembled. I don't. Reed stepped closer. Did you really think no one would notice you smiling when she collapsed? Or that no one would question why a perfectly healthy woman suddenly became confused, dizzy, forgetful? Only after you moved in as her husband's chief of staff? Chloe curled in on herself. Marcus glared at her, suddenly desperate to distance himself. Chloe handled the supplements, he said quickly. I told her to stop. Don't you dare. Chloe screamed. Standing so abruptly, her chair skidded back. You're the one who… Enough. Reed's voice cracked through the room like lightning. They fell silent instantly. Here is what's going to happen now, Reed said, each word slow and precise. I am reopening the proceedings as a criminal inquiry. I have already notified the district attorney. Marcus sucked in a sharp breath. You can't. I can, Reed said, and I have. She gestured to the bailiff at her door. When we return to the courtroom, this recording will be played. A full toxicology report will follow shortly. And the two of you, she let the sentence hang, heavy enough to crush them, will answer for every minute of it. Chloe sank into her seat, both hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. Marcus reached for her arm as if to steady himself, but she jerked away violently. Reed watched the motion with razor-sharp interest. I see the alliance is beginning to fracture, she murmured. Marcus's jaw clenched. This is political assassination, he said. There are people, powerful people, who won't let you destroy me. Reed stepped so close he had to lean back. Mr. Hayes, she said softly, I don't care who you know. Her eyes burned into his. I care about the woman who collapsed in my courtroom. Then she turned to the bailiff. Bring them. The bailiff nodded and motioned to Marcus and Chloe. As they were escorted out, Marcus hissed under his breath to Chloe, You said the PI was dealt with. Chloe whispered back, voice shaking. He was. He should have been. Unless… The door closed before Reed could hear the rest, but she had heard enough. She reached for the toxicology report again, smoothing it carefully. Aara Hayes was fighting for her life across the street, in a sterile hospital room. And now, finally, Judge Evelyn Reed had the opening she needed to bring the truth into the light. The avalanche had begun its descent, and in moments, it would crash in front of the whole world. The gallery was already full when Judge Evelyn Reed returned to the bench. Word had leaked, nobody knew how. Nobody ever did in this city, but whispers spread like wildfire. There's new evidence. The judge has something big. Marcus Hayes is finished. Cameras were strictly forbidden, but reporters still filled every row, pens poised, eyes glittering. The tension felt alive, humming through the oak panels and polished floors. It made the air sharp. It made the silence tremble. Then the side door opened, and Marcus Hayes walked back into the courtroom. He looked smaller than he had that morning. His hair was no longer perfectly combed. A strand fell across his forehead. His jaw was tight, and sweat glistened at his temples. Behind him, Chloe Vance stepped inside, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Gone was the confident posture. Gone was the smirk. She moved like someone walking to her own execution. Croft followed last, eyes hollow. The man looked like he hadn't taken a full breath in an hour. Judge Reed didn't acknowledge any of them at first. She shuffled a few papers, checked her monitor, then finally lifted her gaze slowly, deliberately. We are back on the record, she said. Her voice, though calm, sliced through the murmurs and smothered them instantly. Before the recess, counsel for Mr. Hayes presented arguments regarding Mrs. Hayes's alleged incompetence. She paused. The pause was lethal. The entire courtroom leaned forward. However, Reed continued, her gaze sweeping across Marcus and Chloe before landing on the front row. A new piece of evidence has been presented to this court. Marcus swallowed. Chloe's breath hitched audibly. Judge Reed gestured to the bailiff. Bring the document. A fax machine in the corner chirped to life, spitting out a single sheet of paper. The bailiff retrieved it and handed it to Reed. She read silently, her face tightening not with surprise, but with controlled fury. When she looked up again, everything inside the room froze. This, she said, holding up the paper, is the preliminary toxicology report from St. Luke's Hospital. It indicates that Mrs. Hayes's blood contains elevated levels of lithium orthate and trace amounts of an atypical heavy metal binding agent, neither of which were prescribed to her. Gasps swept through the gallery like a wave. Marcus tried to stand, but Croft grabbed his arm. Chloe looked like she might faint. Reed continued, unmoved. Additionally, she said, these compounds match the substances described in a recording that was anonymously submitted to my chambers. A ripple of electricity moved through the room. The words recording anonymously submitted hit like a thunderclap. Reed reached for the USB drive lying on her bench. Its tiny black shape was suddenly the most terrifying object in the room. Mr. Croft, Reed said without looking at him, you objected earlier to this recording being used. Yes, Your Honor, Croft said quickly, voice strained. It was illegally obtained without consent. Normally, Reed cut in, I would agree. She set the USB down. But when a medical emergency occurs in my courtroom, and the resulting toxicology report corroborates the specifics of that recording, her eyes locked onto Marcus like a judge staring down a man already half condemned. I am obligated to protect the health and safety of a citizen of this state. Marcus shot up. This is a setup. Someone is trying to… Sit down, Mr. Hayes, Reed snapped. He, Saturday hard. Reed nodded to the bailiff. Play the recording. A single key was pressed. A hiss of static filled the courtroom. Then a voice emerged from the speakers, sharp, impatient, unmistakable. Chloe's voice. She's still not getting worse fast enough. The room collectively inhaled. Not a sound followed. No whisper. No shuffle. Nothing. On the defense bench, the real Chloe's face went white. The audio continued. Marcus's voice next. Calm. Cold. I'm using exactly what you told me. 2 drops in her tea. A full capsule in her smoothie. The gallery broke into scattered gasps. Reed held up a hand. Silence returned instantly. On the recording, Chloe laughed. Let it taste off. She's so fogged, she'll forget by lunchtime. Another gasp. The real Chloe flinched as though struck. We need her declared incompetent before the primary season. Her recorded voice purred. Once she's out of the picture, the finances fall exactly where they should. Marcus's real face drained of color. He looked at Chloe with sudden, burning hatred that said, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you delete it? But the recording hadn't finished destroying them yet. Did you see her yesterday? Marcus's recorded voice said. She apologized to me for forgetting the route home. Chloe's recorded voice. She'll be apologizing from a wellness center soon. A clinking of glasses. To the next Mrs. Hayes. A reporter choked loudly. Someone else muttered, oh my God. Chloe stood abruptly, hands shaking. This is fake. This is a deep fake AI, something this isn't real. Marcus seized on the lifeline. Yes, Your Honor, this is political sabotage, this is… Enough. Reed's voice thundered across the courtroom. The bailiff stopped the recording. The silence that followed was suffocating. Reed breathed slowly, once, twice, before speaking again. A deep fake. She let the words hang in the air like the punchline of a cruel joke. You are suggesting that someone created a 12-minute fake recording that precisely predicted the contents of a toxicology report ordered today. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Chloe swayed unsteadily. Reed lifted the toxicology page again. This report shows compounds that do not appear on standard tests. Compounds referenced verbatim in the recording. She folded the paper sharply. That is not coincidence. The gallery erupted, but Reed slammed her gavel so hard the sound cracked like lightning. Bailiff, she commanded. Bring in the district attorney's representative. A man in a suit rose from the back row and approached the bench. He was already dialing his phone. Marcus lurched toward him. Wait, please, this is insane, Your Honor. I love my wife. Do you? Reed asked, her voice chillingly soft. Because it sounds to me like you love your campaign more. Chloe's knees buckled. She fell back into her chair. Marcus stared at her with venom. And then, for the first time, Chloe broke. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. You said she wouldn't. Shut up, Marcus hissed. You shut your mouth. Enough, Reed said again. Bailiff, take Mr. Hayes and Miss Vance into custody pending formal charges. The courtroom detonated. Reporters screamed questions. People jumped to their feet. Cameras flashed despite the rules. Marcus roared, "You have no right." "I have every right," Reed said, unmoved. Chloe sobbed openly now, her eyeliner streaking down her cheeks. A bailiff lifted her to her feet gently but firmly. Her hands trembled as cuffs clicked around her wrists. Marcus fought his restraints. "You did this," he snarled at Chloe. "You said it was safe, you ruined me." "You ruined yourself," she cried back. "You were supposed to delete everything." "I thought you did." "Enough," Reed shouted. They quieted instantly as if someone had severed their voices. The bailiffs began escorting them out through the side door. The room pulsed with noise, energy, disbelief. And Reed watched them go, not triumphant, not satisfied, but grim. She had seen too many tragedies to ever feel joy in moments like this. But she felt something else. Relief. Because somewhere across town, in a white hospital bed, a woman who had been fading for months was finally safe. At Street Luke's hospital, Aara Hayes blinked her eyes open. The world was blurry at first. The ceiling lights too bright. The air far too clean. She felt the oxygen tube across her cheeks, heard the soft beeping of a monitor beside her, and realized she was alive. Arthur Calloway was sitting in the chair next to her, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But when he saw her move, his eyes shone. "Aara," he whispered, leaning forward. "You're back." She swallowed painfully. "Arthur, what happened?" He hesitated only a moment. Then he took her hand gently. "Everything," he said. Everything happened. Outside her window, the golden light of late afternoon spilled across the city, across a world that had finally stopped believing she was crazy. Inside her chest, something small and fragile began to grow again. Strength, awareness, self. And somewhere deep in courtroom 4 amperes, the truth that almost killed her had exploded like a bomb. It would not be the last explosion, but it was the first one she survived. The first thing Aara noticed, after the fog in her mind began to thin, was the light. It wasn't the harsh, buzzing glare of the courtroom or the dim yellow wash of her kitchen at night. It was soft, clean, a warm rectangle of late afternoon sunlight spilling through the blinds of her hospital room and landing across the blanket covering her legs. She stared at it for a long time, as if it were something she hadn't seen in years. Maybe she hadn't. Not truly, not clearly. Her throat still hurt. Her head ached in pulses, like echoes of something pushing its way out of her body. But she was awake, fully awake, not drifting, not falling, not sinking. Awake. Arthur Calloway sat beside her, slumped in a chair that had clearly lost the battle with his tired spine. When he saw her eyes open wider, he straightened abruptly, almost knocking over his coffee. "Aara," he breathed. "Thank God. How do you feel?" She searched for an honest answer. "Like I've been underwater for months," she whispered. "And someone finally pulled me out." Arthur's relief softened his entire face. "They did," he said. "Judge Reed did." Aara blinked. "Judge Reed?" Arthur let out a long exhale and adjusted his glasses. "You fainted during the hearing. She saw things no one else saw, ordered a full toxicology panel, and the results..." He hesitated. "They weren't normal." Aara looked down at her hands. Thin, pale, trembling only slightly now. "I'm not crazy," she said softly. Not a question, a realization. Arthur shook his head gently. "Not even close. You were poisoned, Aara." The word landed like a punch. Poisoned. For a moment, the room felt cold. She felt cold. Memories flickered her, forgetting the grocery store route she'd driven for 15 years, dropping a mug because her hand simply forgot how to hold it, apologizing to Marcus for overreacting when she couldn't find her keys, collapsing on the kitchen floor, too weak to stand. She had begged him to help her. "Help me, Marcus. I don't feel right." He had stroked her hair, kissed her forehead, whispered that she needed to stop stressing, and handed her another glass of the smoothie he made for her every morning. A sour taste rose in her throat. "Marcus," she whispered, voice cracking. He knew. Arthur placed a hand on hers, steady and warm. "He did, but he's not getting away with it." The door creaked open. Aara turned her head slowly. David Chen stepped into the room. For a moment she didn't recognize him. He looked different from the man she had hired months ago. Thinner, older, like he had been carrying a weight no one else could see. But when he offered a small, tentative smile, the memory clicked. "Mr. Chen," she whispered. You're here." David nodded, closing the door behind him. "I heard about what happened in court," he said quietly. "I came as soon as I knew you were awake." Aara tried to push herself up, and Arthur helped her adjust. "You sent the recording," she said. "You saved me." David shook his head immediately. "No," he said softly. "I failed you. I should have come forward sooner. I should have—" "You risked everything," she cut in, her voice steadier than she expected. "Marcus ruined your career. You still helped me." David swallowed hard, jaw tightening with emotion he was trying to hide. "Your husband has powerful friends. I had no badge, no license. The recording was all I had. I didn't even know if the judge would listen." "She did," Arthur said, "and the toxicology matched the recording word for word." Aara looked between the two men, the lawyer who had stayed, even when he was outmatched, and the private investigator who had been destroyed for telling the truth. "Thank you," she whispered. "Both of you." Arthur cleared his throat, stood, and crossed to the foot of her bed. "Aara," he said, "I need to prepare you. The more your system clears, the more memories will come back to you. And they will hurt." She nodded slowly. "I want them back." He hesitated. "Even the ones you've forgotten for a reason?" "Especially those." Her voice didn't waver. Not this time. That night, as the nurses dimmed the lights and the hallway quieted, the memories came. Not violently, not all at once, but gently, like a tide rolling back to reveal things buried beneath the sand. She remembered standing in her kitchen late one night, gripping the counter while Marcus watched her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're scaring me," she'd whispered. "I don't know what's happening to me." He'd smiled soft, comforting. She remembered thinking it was loving, but now she saw the coldness in his eyes beneath the softness. "You're just tired," he'd said. "Drink this." She saw his hands, steady, confident, pouring powder from a small container into her glass. She remembered nodding, trusting him, swallowing every last drop to make him proud. She remembered saying, "Thank you for taking care of me." And she remembered the way Marcus had kissed her forehead tenderly, as if she were something fragile he enjoyed breaking. Aara jerked awake with a gasp, tears streaming silently down her temples. She didn't cry for him. She cried for herself, for the woman who had been disappearing piece by piece while smiling at the man who was killing her. But she didn't cry long, because something stronger than grief rose up inside her anger. Not violent, not wild, but clear, controlled, clean. She wiped her cheeks, exhaled shakily, and whispered into the darkness, "No more." The next morning, as sunlight spilled again across her blanket, she felt steadier, stronger. When Dr. Ellis entered, flipping through her chart, he gave her a nod of approval. "Your levels are stabilizing," he said. "We'll continue flushing your system, but the worst is past." "I want to hear everything," she said. "What exactly did they give me?" The doctor glanced at her, then set the chart aside. "Lithium orthate. Not the prescription form, the supplement grade. In high repeated doses it can cause neurological fog, memory impairment, mood disruption." "And the other compound?" she asked. He hesitated. "It's a metal binding agent, non-prescription, illegal to sell in several countries. Its side effects are severe when misused." Her stomach twisted, but her spine stayed straight. "How long until I recover?" "Physically? A few weeks." He paused. "Emotionally, that's your journey to define." She nodded. "I will define it." A week later, after the detox slowed and the tremors faded, Aara returned to the courtroom, not the same room where she collapsed, but a smaller civil courtroom where the financial division of her case was being heard. She wore a black structured dress, simple but commanding. Her hair, though still thinner than before, was pulled back neatly. She looked like a woman who had crawled out of a grave and come back for her crown. Judge Evelyn Reed presided over the civil hearing as well. When Aara walked in, Reed's expression softened just a flicker, but enough to be seen. Enough that Aara felt something inside her settle into place. Strength. The proceedings were swift. Marcus and Chloe, now represented by overburdened public defenders, pled no contest. They knew they were ruined. Reed reviewed the prenuptial agreement, an agreement Marcus once wielded like a weapon. This document, Reed said sharply, holding it up, was executed under the assumption of good faith. Mr. Hayes and Miss Vance acted in clear, malicious, criminal bad faith. Therefore, she tore the agreement in half. The sound echoed like a gunshot. This prenup is void. Mrs. Hayes is awarded full interest in the marital assets. The courtroom gasped. Aara didn't. She simply breathed slow, steady. Reed wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, given the physical, psychological, and financial harm inflicted upon Mrs. Hayes, punitive damages in the amount of $12 million are awarded, to be collected from any and all current or future assets belonging to Mr. Hayes and Miss Vance. Chloe dropped her head into her hands. Marcus stared blankly ahead, hollow. Reed looked at Aara then, and for the first time since Aara met her, the judge spoke gently. Mrs. Hayes, she said, you were not weak. You were targeted. Aara's throat tightened. She nodded once. Firmly. A verdict. A reclaiming. A return. When the hearing ended, Aara walked out into the hallway where the city's afternoon light pooled through tall windows. The same light she'd watched in the hospital. The same light she thought she'd never see clearly again. She stood in it now, strong, whole, alive. Not the woman who collapsed. The woman who came back. On the morning of the criminal trial, the courthouse steps were lined with cameras. Gray clouds hung low over the city like a warning, but the air vibrated with something sharper anticipation. People came not just to witness justice, but to watch the final fall of two people who once moved through the city like royalty. Marcus Hayes arrived first, flanked by two corrections officers. He looked nothing like the polished councilman who had strutted through these halls months earlier. His suit hung awkwardly on him, his hair unkempt, his eyes wild with sleepless terror. Behind him, Chloe Vance shuffled forward in shackles, her once glossy hair scraped into a lifeless knot. Her face was pale, gaunt, stripped of its calculated beauty. When she saw the crowd, something in her seemed to crumble. A reporter shouted, "Chloe, do you regret it?" She flinched violently, as if the words themselves had claws. Inside the courtroom, the silence was different from any that came before. This wasn't the suffocating tension of accusation. It was the heavy, expectant quiet of an approaching judgment. Aara Hayes entered through a side door. She didn't hurry. She didn't hide. She walked with the steady, measured calm of someone who had rebuilt herself piece by piece. Her navy suit fit her like armor. Her healed posture made her look taller. Her eyes clear, steady, sharp, never drifted toward Marcus or Chloe. Not once. Judge Evelyn Reed sat at the bench again, though this time she wasn't alone. A second judge, overseeing the criminal portion, sat beside her. But it was Reed the room looked to. Reed who had ignited this trial. Reed who had dragged the truth into the light. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Sarah Jennings, stood tall at her table. Her stack of files looked like weapons neatly arranged before battle. "The state calls Aara Hayes," she announced. Aara rose without hesitation and walked to the stand. Every step was silent, but each one shook the room. When she sat, she didn't look fragile. She didn't look lost. She looked like a woman who had been to hell and walked back out by choice. Jennings approached the podium. "Mrs. Hayes," she began gently, "can you tell the court what the last 6 months of your marriage were like?" Aara took a breath. Her voice, when she spoke, wasn't loud, but it filled the room. It was like slowly disappearing. Marcus stiffened. Chloe's fists clenched. Aara continued. "I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't remember things. I felt like the world was tilting all the time. I thought I was losing my mind." She paused. And then, with cold clarity, added, "But someone was taking my mind from me." Gasps rippled across the gallery. Jennings nodded. "What do you mean by that?" Aara looked directly at the jury. "I was not unstable," she said softly. "I was poisoned, repeatedly, methodically, by the two people sitting at that table." Marcus let out a strangled sound. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. Aara didn't turn toward them. She didn't need to. "They made me doubt myself," she said. "They made doctors doubt me. They made the world believe I was incompetent. They convinced me that I was a burden. And every day, while I begged for help, They smiled at me as if they cared. A juror wiped a tear. Another shook their head in disbelief. Jennings placed a hand on the podium. "Mrs. Hayes," she said gently, "how did you survive this?" Aara inhaled slowly. "Someone told the truth," she said. "A detective who lost everything but still did the right thing. A judge who saw through lies. And eventually, I remembered who I was." She folded her hands. "I survived because I wasn't alone. They tried to erase me, but I came back." Jennings smiled softly. "No further questions, Your Honor." Defense rose next. A thin, tired man named Green, assigned by the court, stepped toward Aara cautiously as if afraid she could see through him the way she saw through everyone else. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, "given the stress, the emotional difficulty, are you sure you're remembering things correctly?" He emphasized stress, like it was a fragile blade he hoped might cut her. Aara leaned forward slightly. Her voice dropped into something colder, clearer. "Mr. Green," she said, never breaking eye contact. "Unstable people misremember things." She paused. "I didn't misremember. I was made to forget." The courtroom went dead silent. Green swallowed hard. No further questions. When Aara stepped down from the stand, she didn't look at Marcus or Chloe, but they looked at her. Marcus's face twisted with something sour, regret, jealousy, hatred, fear, something monstrous finally seen without disguise. Chloe's eyes followed Aara with a hollow desperation, as if silently begging for mercy from the very person she'd almost destroyed. Aara walked back to her seat, and didn't look back. The closing statements were brutal. Jennings laid out the evidence with surgical precision: texts, receipts, toxicology experts, the recording. The one that had been played so many times the city could recite it like scripture. When Jennings finished, nothing remained of Marcus or Chloe's defense. Nothing except the ashes of their ambition. The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. They returned with verdicts that hit like hammer strikes. Guilty. 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 Marcus's knees buckled. He reached toward the table to steady himself, but his hand slipped. He fell to the floor, not gracefully, not dramatically, just crumpled, like something had finally broken inside him. Chloe covered her face with her cuffed hands and sobbed. Not theatrically, not manipulatively, just a guttural, broken sound of someone who had run out of lies. Judge Reed requested to deliver the sentencing herself. When she rose, even the air seemed to stiffen. "Mr. Hayes," she said, voice cool as winter, "you used your influence to manipulate, harm, and silence the one person who trusted you most. Your actions were calculated, cruel, and shameless." Marcus closed his eyes. Reed turned to Chloe. "Miss Vance, you acted with equal malice. You enabled, encouraged, and participated in the systematic destruction of an innocent woman's life." Chloe sobbed harder. Reed looked to the room. "Let this be clear," she said. "Power is not permission. Ambition is not justification. And silence," she looked at Aara. "Silence is not weakness." She picked up the gavel. Marcus Hayes, 15 years in state prison. Chloe Vance, 12 years. Marcus screamed. Chloe collapsed. The bailiffs dragged them away. It was done. Outside, the world roared. Reporters shouted Aara's name from every direction, their voices echoing across the courthouse plaza. "Mrs. Hayes, do you want to say something? How do you feel now? What's next for you?" Aara stepped forward. The cameras converged. She waited, and slowly, like a tide pulling back, the noise quieted. "For 6 months," she said, her voice steady and warm enough to cut through the cold air. "I was told I was broken. I was told I was unstable, that I was the problem." A hush fell. Today, the court confirmed that I was none of those things. She took a breath. "I am a survivor, and I'm going to rebuild my life." A reporter called out, "Will you work with Detective Chen again?" Aara's eyes softened. "I already am," she said. "Our investigative firm opens next month." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Aara smiled faintly, not for them, for herself. Then she stepped through the lines of reporters and descended the courthouse steps alone, not escorted, not helped, under her own strength. When she reached the bottom, The sunlight touched her face. Clear, bright, honest. She walked into it without looking back. If this story touched you, if it made you remember the quiet acts of strength that shape our lives, please consider following and subscribing. Here, we honor forgotten voices, true stories of resilience, and the quiet power of justice. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for listening.